where we are, where we're going, and what is going to be what we're going to see.
After the war, we lived in this town that was captured and reclaimed by Polish people, and basically they throw away the German. And we received a very nice little house on the street Słoneczna that we're going to try to see it, and we're going to try to see the pool that was not too far from my street, the pool that I almost got drowned before I learned how to swim. We are in front of the little building, very small building, called in Polish kiosk ruchu. You can buy a lot of things here. When I used to be a small child, I used to buy paper book all the time. I read all the French literature out of the little bookstore like that. And you can buy newspaper, you could buy in some places candy and cookies. And it was a great place to just go and look around and buy yourself stuff. When I was very upset or want to celebrate, I used to buy myself little chocolate that had liqueur inside. And I said, oh, I'm going to get drunk with that liqueur. We're going to Słoneczna now. Hi. We are on a street where my sister was born in November of 1946. We used to live here about 2 years altogether. And my mother used to work in the manufacturing of cloth, and I used to have to take care of my sister because I was, the older sister. I was not even 8 years old, and I had to take care of them. My two sisters, Sofia and Irka. As far as I remember, we lived maybe in this house or maybe in the next house. Look very much like the house we're living in. It's like a duplex basically, but I don't know for sure because across the street there's a big house that has been built most recently, and it's multiple apartments. But this house is exactly like I remember it was our house. I'm going to ring and see if anybody will answer. If not in this house, maybe in the next door. Before the war, that was a Jewish neighborhood. As you know, I was 9 months old when the German came to Warsaw really quickly. I think the Polish army was able to hold German only for 12 days. They were on the horses and the German were on the tanks. Well, the life here started to be difficult, rather it was war. And my mother thought it's going to be horrible. She was very intelligent. And she said, I have to run away from here. So she took me as a little baby and ran with me to Russia. Because my mother grew up in Russia. She was there in orphanage during World War I, revolution. She lost her family there. The point was that my father just started his medical practice. He graduated just recently. We're talking right now, 39, 40. He just came from Rome, where he finished, Rome, Italy. And he probably didn't want to leave. He had an office, he has expensive equipment. So he didn't left Warsaw, but my mother alone left and trying to run away from German. But my father, like many Jews, believed that it won't be so horrible. So my mother came back. When the ghetto was already here, they put the wall all around. They were able, because my family was Jews, that they were emancipated. They spoke Polish. They were not very religious at all. And they had a woman who came to clean the house. Usually they were Polish women. And they were pretty friendly with those women, and they were able to sneak me out from ghetto. And mostly with help of my aunt from my father's side. Paula was an aunt who I kept in touch all her life later on. I must have been like 3 years old. And I went to the train and I ended up in the countryside in some family house. I remember that. I remember going on a train. I remember being in the country with strangers, but there was a little girl. And I was left there without my mother, without my aunt. one of my memory from being in the country was that girl of the daughter of the owner was a little bit older than me maybe. Her name was Irena. And there was teacher coming to teach her. But it was not for me. I was supposed to mind the geese or something. And I was very unhappy about it because I wanted to learn. The war is over. Mother come and find me. We moved to Bielawa because the whole Warsaw is destroyed. Before we moved to Bielawa, my mother had some friends in nearby city of Otwock, suburb. So we stayed there for a couple of days. Dzień dobry pani. Czy można by było na sekundę zajrzeć? Bo myśmy kiedyś mieszkali w tym domku. Czy pozwoliłaby pani tylko wejść do sieni? Dziękuję. To teraz tu mieszkają ludzie na dole i na górze, tak? Before we had apartment, all of it was ours, downstairs and upstairs. Pani rozumie po angielsku?
Tak.
Bo to mój syn jeszcze nie mówi po polsku. Myśmy tutaj mieszkali, tylko nie jestem pewna. Wy jak dawno tu mieszkacie?
No 10 lat.
10 lat. Myśmy tu zaraz po wojnie przyjechali. I to tak było, jak żeście się wprowadzili, prawda?
Tak, już było podzielone.
Już to już było podzielone, a myśmy to już mieli wszystko.
A ci
było.
państwo z boku na przykład mają wszystko.
Wszystko, tak. I wyście tutaj kuchenkę sobie dorobili, bo była kiedyś na dole kuchenka chyba.
Nie, no to już jak zostało
To
podzielone
już podzielone,
na mieszkania,
tak,
to już
oczywiście. Bardzo dziękuję, że pani mnie tu wpuściła, bo syn robi film o mnie i wszystko chce tutaj zarejestrować. A pani by nie miała nic przeciwko temu, jakby on panią sfotografował?
No, raczej nie.
Jak pani na imię?
Magda.
Magda, ja mam Maria na imię. Ja tu przyjechałam na kongres esperantystów. A to jeszcze macie taką skrzynkę, na górze jest to taka schowek jest, tak?
Na górze jest w ogóle strych i tam jeszcze są pokoje.
A pokoje jeszcze macie, tak? Tak jakby sypialnia mała, można
Tak,
też?
sypialnia jest i właśnie tam jest pokój taki strych
także,
zrobiony pod dasze.
tak. Myśmy to, mi się bardzo to podobało, od razu po wojnie przyjechaliśmy. No i mama jeszcze miała 2 młodszych dzieci, było dziewczynki, ja się musiałam nimi zajmować, także nie za bardzo mogłam chodzić do szkoły. Ale już w tej chwili mieszkamy bardzo daleko. A wie pani coś o Esperanto?
Nie.
Międzynarodowy język? Nic pani nie wie?
Nie.
Bo w tej chwili jest wielki kongres w Białymstoku. Właśnie na ten kongres ja przyjeżdżam, bo ja się zajmowałam Esperantem od bardzo młodego. Po prostu dużo młodych ludzi się w tym Esperanto zajmuje i ja teraz z synem jadę z jednego kongresu na drugi. To jest taka ciekawa rzecz, bo tyle jest na przykład języków, a jak się jedzie po Europie, już tu jest czecki, tu jest niemiecki, a tu jest...
Właśnie niemiecki.
jest
tak.
tak.
Bardziej tak w stronę
A
niemieckiego
tu jest,
poszło.
bo w tej chwili angielski jest bardziej potrzebny chyba.
No tak, aczkolwiek jakoś łatwiej było
Się
mi
uczyć,
się
wejść.
niemieckiego.
A rosyjski?
A to
To już się, nikt się nie
lata.
uczy, nikt się nie uczy rosyjskiego.
jeszcze raz.
Ja jeszcze się bardzo uczyłam. O, do widzenia.
widzenia.
Our house was up and down, but they divided now. Well, I was lucky. The young girl was just taking out the garbage, and I was able to start talking to her. And she was kind enough to show us the house where we used to live. But right now the house is divided in 2, so we had more space. She just had the upper part, and it was very nice lady who is a student. And she studied biology. She doesn't know much about Esperanto, I'm sorry to say. I think her sister are just coming, isn't it? I think so. Anyhow, it was a lovely house. My father was arrested on the street because he was there after the police hour. And despite the effort of the family, he was killed in the infamous prison on Pawiak Street. The situation in ghetto was awful, and people knew if they could, they were trying at least save the children. They were doomed. It was so written on the wall, they already knew. So my aunt, the Jewish people had a good relationship with Polish people who spoke perfect Polish language. And mostly little girls were much easier to survive than boys. Mostly blonde girls with a green eye, and that was me. Blonde, curly hair with a green eye, green blue eye. So I looked like any child, Polish child. And my Aunt Paula looked very well like a little Polish young lady. So my mother entrusted me to her sister-in-law, because Paula was a sister of my father. She entrusted me, and she took me on a train. I remember walking through the Warsaw street, and I remember sitting in a train. I remember sitting by the window and looking out, but I remember being afraid and being very quiet. That was how my life was safe, in a way. And then I remember being in it was totally small farmer house. There was mother and father and a girl a little bit older than me. Her name was Irena. The last name was Marcinkowska. My aunt was helping those people all through the many, many years, sending them packages and money, because they saved my life. After the war was over, my mother found me. Somehow it must have been long enough time that I was not sure that she's my mother. But of course the farmer said, "This is your mother." Okay, I embraced her. She took me from there, and we came to Warsaw. Warsaw was totally destroyed. There was no building standing. But somehow she was able to find some friends and some place where we could stay overnight. My mother bought me a ring of little like obażanki, round little bread, and I saw a burger, and I ate a couple, and then I gave it to the beggar the rest, and my mother said, "What are you doing? I am very hungry, and you give away the bread that we have." So I had problem with, I was always too good to give things away or information away. I was too friendly. From here we went to Bielawa, where my sister were born. We lived in Bielawa about 2 years, and from there we went to Israel, where we lived about a year, and from there we came back to Poland. I went to orphanage for older children. My sister went to orphanage for younger children. But very soon my mother got an apartment right here on Nowolipie 25, Nowolipie 25, apartment 50, next door. And she was able to bring me and my sister together, to live together. Well, she was working. She was trying to do anything she could. She was teaching Russian most of the time. She had to go, she was working. She had to provide some food to the house. I sometimes had to shop too, because my mother was buying cakes and I had to go and buy bread. We live here about 2 years, maybe a little bit more than 2 years. From 45 to 48, just after the war. Oh, I had a good time, except I had a couple of accidents. Like I fall down on the glass, and I still have the glass was in the door in the house, and then I slid, and there was a wire. I mean, how do you call a wire that has this barbed wire, and I cut my legs really badly. So I had a bunch of little scars, but I survived. And of course I had to go to emergency room and had the emergency appendectomy. My mother is blaming her neighbor, nice people, because we had a big dinner with them night before. Among others, I ate eggs, and my mother said that was the eggs who did it. I walked from my house to a daycare center. That was before my sister were born. So I was going to like little, we call it przedszkola at the time. It's a place before the school, like kindergarten. And I don't think it was very far. and I was just walking there by myself, and suddenly I got a very big pain in my stomach, and instead of continue to go to the daycare center, I decided just to walk to the hospital and tell them I have a lot of pain, and they just admitted me, even without my mother being there or permission or anything. And I think I had a surgery right away. And later on, and I remember very well how they put me to sleep. They put some kind of mask on my face, and they were dripping ether, and I fell asleep that way. And when I wake up, my mother was sitting next to me, and she had a lot of ice cream. I don't know, somehow she thought ice cream will make me feel better. Yeah, that's my memory of this area. Drowning, almost getting killed with the appendix, bursting of the appendix, falling down on a big piece of glass that should have been removed from a door, and if I had fall on my neck, I probably would have died, but it just happened to be on the hand. Falling on the barbed wire, almost getting killed, but you know, that's a normal experience of child growing, you know. We're standing in front of the Pałac Kultury i Sztuki that was opened in 1955. My home is not far from here, and I start almost immediately coming here for the pool, and I become a part of the team of the swimmers. And in 1959, so just a few years later, we have very successful and large Esperanto Congress on which there were more than 5,000 people. By then I already spoke very well Esperanto, and I was in part working, helping people, and I got so many contacts to be able to go abroad with my Esperanto. In this place we have a movie theater, we have a bunch of museums, we have a very lovely big pool indoor, very large library. I had been using this place like my home away from home. I came here very often, almost every day, just walking distance from my home. I had to be a babysitter all through my life. From the time my sister was born, I really didn't have much childhood. First there was a war, then I had to do so much work with my sister. It's not fair. Kind of funny. They were my like dolls. And they always said if I punish them or make them do something, they said, when they grow up, they're going to get together and beat me up. Yes, my sister was a big part of my life because I had to take care of them. I had to take them to kindergarten, pick them back, bring them home. When I went to school, I was always late because it was always, I had to make them come with me. It's unbelievable. Sometimes I was so late and I let them go by themselves. Well, thank goodness there was no traffic. I don't know if we can drive to the part of the city where I went to school, because my mother said, this is such a lovely neighborhood, go to school there. The name of the neighborhood was Bilani. It was really a beautiful area, but it took a long time to get there. Sometimes I had to change trams, go from one tram, another tram, and the children, they were just 4 years old, 2 girls, and I had to take care of them. I had to help them to get up, get dressed, give them some food, run to the tram, take one tram, take another tram, and travel across Warsaw. And then I had to get them to the kindergarten, and I had to run to school, and I was always late. Thank goodness I was a good student. And then from school I had to go, pick them up, bring them home. I had to work. If people said, how come I retired so early? Because I worked since I was 4. Because I worked when I was in that farm. I was a goose girl. The goose bite me, the dog bite me. It was life, you know. When I had the free time, I was reading books. I was a big reader. And I was doing very well in school because I read the books because I was interested in books. So when I got the books in the beginning of the school year, I read them. So I knew, sometimes I felt I knew more than a teacher. That was I was a little bit not nice brat, you know. If you think you know more than a teacher, you better keep quiet. By the way, I want to tell you how the books were coming. There weren't many books. So by the end of the year, the children from the higher class will bring their books, and you bought them from them. And then if you didn't mess them up too badly, you could almost get all your money back by selling them to the younger grade. By the way, my classes were very, very jumpy. I went to many classes, many schools. In the beginning, I went to school not too far from here on Elektoralna. When I took my sisters to kindergarten in Bielawa, I was already in high school. But elementary school I did in this neighborhood. No, actually not. No, the last classes of elementary school I did in Bielawa. So I graduated there. And then where did I go to high school? For 2 years. I think also in Bielany. And then I came to the school that I was learning technical dentistry, you know, to do crown. That's a good profession. When I came to Boston, I got a job right away. And we're standing here in front of the house where I lived for 13 years, from 1950 to 1963. The address is Novolipie, Dudek, 25. We were living in apartment number 50. And we just came to visit this place again after many, many years. The place looked the same, except the trees are larger, and it looked really nice. And except look like everybody seems to have a car now on the street. But I had a good time here. That house was called Block 12, means that was the 12th house that was built on this place. This is land of ghetto. The whole area was totally destroyed, and there were just ruin of the previous building. So it was like they had to dig out the ruin of the old building to build those blocks. And well, there's a lot of history. The street parallel to this one is Novolipki, and it's a famous book about girls from Novolipki. I'm not too sure if it's translated in English. We are by the house with the number 25B, and I lived in the house 25A, so it's just next door. And this house used to be a daycare center for little children, and my sisters came here and stayed here for a couple of months. When we moved to this area, they were already not so small, so pretty soon they went to kindergarten. This location was Warsaw Ghetto. After the war, there was no houses. They were all just ruined. But very near here is a street that was the wall of ghetto, and on the other side was a very important building. It was the courthouse. And for a while, the people from ghetto and the people from the city were able to walk in that courthouse. Of course, Jewish people had to have, by law, yellow star. So they were, but if you were brave enough and smart enough and took off the star, you can just try to get in and melt it into other population. Of course, if the German just shot you, if they find out you're not really, if you're Jew, and you had to have a good support of Polish friends to help you to sleep through the night, because you couldn't just stay on the street at night. There was, I don't know exactly what time, but there was this police hour and you have to be out of the street. If you are on the street, you were shot or taken to jail. Now we're going to try to visit some of the old friends and see if we can see our old apartment. I just want to add that downstairs were shops all over here. And now we are going to try to see some of my old friends. They might be still around, and hopefully we could see our old apartment if they let us in. If I had been still living here, I could work downstairs because they have a medical clinic down here. Before they had a whole bunch of shops, like bread and butter and all kinds of necessity, for daily necessity. There were all shops here. Well, if we cannot go, let's see if the other side will be maybe open. See, it's very lovely here in the back. When I came, it was just nothing. They just started planting, and now there are full-grown trees all over. But that was, you know, how many years ago? More than 50 years ago when I was here. Look how nice are those gardens.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry.
Czy mogłaby Pani na chwilę mnie tu wpuścić? Wie Pani, ja tu kiedyś mieszkałam i pokazuję synowi w ogóle ten budynek. Mieszkaliśmy w Waszym mieszkaniu.
Jak to w naszym?
To znaczy, ja tam mieszkałam w tym mieszkaniu jako dziecko i chciałam trochę synowi pokazać.
Nie, proszę Pani, absolutnie nic.
Ale nie, ja do Pani, do mieszkania nie wejdę, tylko chciałam po prostu chociażby na klatkę wejść i pokazać mu balkon i tak dalej. Ja nie będę Pani przeszkadzać.
Ale proszę
Ja tu też mam znajomych nowaczek na pierwszym...
nie żyje.
Pani Nowaczek już nie żyje, a kto tam u niej mieszka wtedy? Córka czy wnuczka?
Nikt, zupełnie ktoś obcy.
Zupełnie ktoś obcy? To by Pani mi nie pozwoliła tylko na klatkę na chwilę wejść?
Nie wejdzie na klatkę.
To dziękuję, to może Pani tylko otworzy te drzwi, dobrze?
Okay, let's go. So 2 floors up. Ski obok mieszkają? Tarczyński, tak? I went to movies a lot. And then later on, when I was in college or in university, I went to a theater a lot. I saw all the play, all the opera. The tickets were extremely inexpensive. And I like to, talking about eating, if I didn't eat at home, there was a restaurant right here on the main street in front of the courthouse that is right here to your left. And there was a restaurant called Bar Mleczny. The food was excellent and was very, very inexpensive. That Bar Mleczny even survived till 10 years ago because I still went there. Those places were probably subsidized by the government. But anyhow, they cooked a lot. They had a lot of people coming and eating. So I don't think really the government was losing any money. They were just a good food, very wholesome, not much election maybe. You know, there was a couple of soup, naleśniki, that was extremely good. You know, naleśniki with cheese or some fruit, with very good śmietana, that is like a, you know, kotlety maybe. No. Bar Mleczny basically was no meat meal. Very inexpensive. And I just love it. A lot of potatoes, you know, things like that. I love movies and I see them all. I used to buy a newspaper and see what's playing in what movie and just go. Sometimes I was cutting classes to go to the movies. That must have been already when my sister went to school by themselves. You know, they were growing up. They went to school right here. I mean, very, very near walking distance, I showed to you yesterday. So they could really take care of themselves. They probably was latchkey kids, so I didn't have to be constantly busy with them, you know. I started going to the movies when we were in Bilava. I was sneaking into the movie, I didn't have any money, and I was pretending to be with someone else. I don't know how my mother let me do it. That was before I even had my sisters. My favorite movie at the time was a Russian movie called Circus. The story was about American troupe circus coming to Russia, to Moscow, and performing. The main artist was a beautiful American woman who fell in love with the Russian performer, and he fell in love with her. And the dramatic point of that movie was that that woman, American woman, white American woman, had a black child. And that was, she was very, that was not the time to have illegitimate black child. And that was the dramatic point. But in the end of the movie, because there's a bad man, of course, the manager from America, in the end of the movie, all the Russian people are taking care of the baby. The baby is being, a small child, being passed from one person to another, and they singing a beautiful song saying, in Russia, it doesn't matter what color you are, you can be in stripe or in dots, and we love you. And the music is just absolutely beautiful from that movie, like a lullaby. But I don't know if anybody wants me to sing it, no. Because when I think about it, I can sing just anything like that. But talking about evenings, what did I do? Closer to my house, just on the street, like maybe 10 minutes walk from here, was a Dom Kultury. That's a cultural house where there were all kinds of activities, and among others, I belonged to the photographic circle. So I was making pictures, black and white, and developing them over there. And I also belonged there to the group that was playing accordion. That was another of my hobby at the time. So I was pretty busy. I tried to be as busy as I could to have a good life. And I also went to River Wisła. That's not too far from here. You have to go by tram. And I belonged to the group that was rowing on the river. I had the experience that I was like the last one carrying the long boat, because we were 8 people, and somehow or another I ended up in the water. I moved that. Państwo tarczyńscy obok mieszkają? Czy pan nie zna ich?
Tarczyńscy?
Tarczyński.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry. Ja tu kiedyś mieszkałam i się przyjaźniłam z koleżanką.
Tu pani mieszkała?
Nie, ja mieszkałam w 50. Po mieszkaniu 50. To jest mój syn. On robi taki dokumentarz o moim życiu. I chciałam na chwileczkę wejść, ale mnie nie pozwolili. Tak, ale no nieważne, te wszystkie mieszkania tak
niżej,
sama
tak?
mieszkają. Ładnie macie mieszkanko na pewno. Macie taką tu w środku. To kto mieszka obok?
Pani Złomkiewicz.
Osworkiewicz.
Złomkiewicz.
A to pan nie zna pana Tarczyńskiego?
Nie.
To może się wyprowadzili.
Nie.
Tak, bo to w tym mieszkaniu mieszkali, tak. Ale mogli się wyprowadzić.
Może ona jest z domu, Tarczyńska, ta pani Mirosława.
Bardzo mi miło, Maria Murphy w tej chwili ze Stanów. A moglibyśmy na 1 sekundę wejść do państwa, tak popatrzeć, czy nie?
Jest nieporządek.
Nieporządek?
Okej,
dobrze.
Jesteśmy przed wyjazdem na urlop.
Do Europy jedziecie?
Tak, w Polsce. W Polsce
O, po polsku. A, prawda?
Ale nasze dzieci chodzą na angielski do przedszkola.
Tak?
Może coś zaśpiewacie po angielsku?
Oh, I would like to ABC. Do you know ABC?
Nie.
Nie?
Marysiu, policz do 10 po angielsku.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Very good. You forgot about 10. Bardzo ładnie. Ale jest zimno u was, nie? Na morzu. I kiedy jedziecie? Jutro?
Wszystkie piosenki jedziemy w poniedziałek.
Em,
To pani syn czy wnuczek?
To jest mój syn. Ja późno miałam
Ale
ten
nie
syn.
mówi po polsku?
Nie, nie mówi.
Nie miał szansy się nauczyć?
Troszeczkę mówi dzień dobry, dziękuję, ale tak, polskie słowa trudno wymówić. Ja mówię po Esperanto, wie pani. I staram się, a wy macie coś z Esperantem wspólnego? Ja już mówiłam,
Moment, znaczy wie pani.
wie pani, moja mama nie była dobrą gospodynią. I poza tym uważała, że zawsze wyjeżdżamy. To do naszego domu, mieszkania nie można było nikogo zaprosić, bo nic nie kupiła, mebli nie kupiła, lamp nie kupiła, no bo wyjeżdżamy. Myśmy ciągle czekali, żebyśmy już te papiery dostali i wyjechali. W międzyczasie moje dwie siostry, co były bliźnięta, już miały 15-16 lat, już nie chciały jechać, bo miały już kolegów, znajomych i awantury były niesamowite. Ja już też nie chciałam wyjechać, bo byłam pod koniec studiów, ale taka była sytuacja, że jakbym skończyła studia, to bym musiała praktykować tutaj, to może by mnie w ogóle nie wypuścili, bo wie pan, rozmaite te staże i tak dalej. I ja bardzo lubię podróżować. Dla mnie podróże, i moja mama też. Także żeśmy na walizkach siedzieli. A po środku pokoju, bo mama lubi książki, ja lubię książkę, to była taka, jak to się mówi, góra książek. I ja tam zawsze sobie przeglądałam, bo nie było półki, nie było szafki, nie było nic. Tylko tak materace były, to się spało. Ale fajnie było. Ostatecznie jak się jest młodym,
A
to
pani jest
wszędzie.
rodowitą warszawianką? Przepraszam.
Warszawianką, tak, ja się tu
A przed
urodziłam.
wojną gdzie pani mieszkała?
No, przed wojną to ja się, jeszcze mnie nie było, to ja się jak...
A no przepraszam.
Myśmy właściwie mieszkali w tej okolicy przed wojną. I mój ojciec akurat skończył medycynę i mieli taki aparat, co robił prześwietlenie. I mama mi trochę powiedziała, że ten aparat jakoś nam uratował życie, nie wiem jak. Jakoś. I myśmy się tu wprowadzili już chyba w 50 roku. To ja jeszcze byłam zupełnie dzieckiem wtedy.
50 bo 49 nawet.
I moje siostrzyczki były zupełnie małe i tu było przedszkole dla nich. No to jak to się mówi, stare lata. Bardzo dziękuję, żeście otworzyli drzwi i dzieci są fantastyczne. Do zobaczenia, dziękuję, do zobaczenia. Goodbye! To jakby co, jeszcze co, to byśmy chcieli z wami, ale w poniedziałek i tak wyjeżdżacie. To do zobaczenia. Aha, pozdrawiam, jakbyście przyjechali na Florydę, to proszę bardzo, znajdźcie mnie, Murphy. Do widzenia. My mother for a long time wanted to live on the west part of the world. Somehow she didn't like the system, and she believed that the life in the United States is absolutely wonderful, that the streets are paved with gold. And she had her uncle who was professor at Harvard at the time in Boston. And the point was that my mother was getting to be old at that time, my sister were young, and the only person that was in her 20s, so working person, was me. So it was given to me as an understanding that I cannot leave behind. I can't stay behind. Besides, I was still my mother daughter. I don't want to stay behind. My younger sister, mostly Sophia, they were already in a deep relationship with other people. I wasn't. So, like I said, I had this mixed reaction, but I went. And actually, I left early and I stayed in Paris for a couple of days, make some arrangement. But I was already familiar with the West because for a couple of years I was traveling west for my Esperanto life. So I went to Paris, I make some arrangement. Why would we leave? Because my mother thought life would be better for us. in the United States, and I'm glad she did it, because as much as I liked Poland, I like the language, culture, and food very much. United States give you bigger opportunity. Mostly Florida, for me, is absolutely essential for my health. With all my neurovascular problem, I would have suffered a lot living through the winter in a cold climate. I left earlier. I was in Paris for a couple of days making arrangements, but then we went on the boat in the Baltic Sea, and we came to United States on a boat called United States. And I remember my favorite food at the place was cornflakes. Well, you know, the food, I mean, on the boat is fantastic. They feed us very good. There was only a couple of rough time because it was in the middle of winter. We arrived to New York like a couple of days before Christmas, probably 2 or 3 days before Christmas, so it was cold. And when we arrived to New York, I already have my Esperanto friends waiting for me. Yes, in the beginning, I keep in touch with people, but they were always asking for things, demanding things, asking me to invite them. And I couldn't do it. You know, I had a little job. My account, I didn't have any saving. I had to support my mother and my 2 sisters. How could I bring any more people at that time? Yes, and after a while, you know, of course, those relationships are, there's not enough basis for those relationships. I would consider my Esperanto friends more like almost a family, because I see those people from time to time when I go to the conference, Esperanto conference. But I didn't have any very strong tie or relationship with anybody. There was actually a man living right here in one of those houses, and he was very nice, and I could say maybe he was like the closest friend, mostly geographically because he was right here, but not really. I mean, he was engineer at that time and I was always student. No problem. I love to travel, and travel always comes first. It looks like a lovely garden, doesn't it? The trees are full-grown trees, and we are approaching the main street. It used to be called Świerczewskiego. Now is the name of the Pope. And this to the right used to be a library, and across the street was my school, mine, one of many. And here we have a whole bunch of shops. The library is still there. We're going toward the library. The Polish blood was spilled here in September of 1944. In this place, many people lost their life. It doesn't say how many, but people, I mean, Germans were just putting people against the wall and just shooting them and left them there to die. I'm going to the library now. This is the library I spent many hours when I was growing up here and study. It was very hard to get these textbooks, and library has them, so you came here and you had to grab the textbook and study here. You couldn't take it home, you know.
Jest wystawa poświęcona właśnie 20-leciu demokracji w Polsce, więc jeżeli Państwo chcecie, to proszę tu na
Tu można na pierwsze piętro wejść? To dziękuję bardzo.
nasza historia.
Dziękuję Pani bardzo. Dobrze, dobrze. Okej, dziękuję. Dziękuję. This is the history of the city and the library. This is the president. We see the sign of the street, name of the street is Ludwig Zamenhof. He lived on the street. I don't remember exactly what was the name of the street before, but he lived here somewhere. Somewhere there is a table that prescribed that he was living there. He worked as a doctor, eye doctor in here, and he worked till he died, I believe in 1918, after during the World War I. And now we'll go to see the monument to hero of Warsaw Ghetto. This place was named the square, the Platz of hero of Warsaw Ghetto, but then Willy Brandt came here, put some flowers on the monument, and they call it Monument of Willy Brandt, and I think it's unfair. And here, not far, is a street named Miła Street, and it's a famous book written Miła 18, where the hero partisans of ghetto were fighting against German occupation, and the fight lasted more than a month. They were still able to fight. Of course, all of them were doomed, but they were doomed anyhow. I was here with my husband, Ralph, in '87. That was Esperanto Congress here. That was 100th anniversary of appearing of the first book of Esperanto. It appeared in 1887, the first book. So in 1987, we had the Congress right here. That was my second Congress in Warsaw, because the first one was in 1959. That really gave me friendship and opened the door abroad. And so I was here with him, and I live in the apartment right here on Novolipie 25 with these friends of mostly my sister, Nowacek. We had a room there when we were living here. Well, I was a week for the Congress, and I was with Joe, my older son, yearly in Krakow. There was a medical conference and youth conference that we attended for Esperanto, and then Joe went to a children conference here in Warsaw, and then he went with the family of Mr. and Mrs. Nowacek and spent almost a month on the lake, and Ralph stayed here longer. He spent a week traveling with the group of Esperantists, and I came back home because my younger boy David was young and I wanted to take care of him. We're standing in front of the monument dedicated to the hero of the ghetto uprising. The people who were in charge of the uprising was working out of one of the buildings in this neighborhood on Miła 18. There is a book, but Mr. Leo Juris, and there's also a movie called Miła 18. I somehow was lucky. I was 9 years old, and I ended up, because I used to walk every day from my house to the park nearby, and I was standing here, came to this monument, and I saw as many people were here, and they were officially opening Malkovries in Esperanto. They were officially opening the monument, cutting the ribbon. Just behind the street behind us is street of Ludwig Zamenhof. He used to live on that street and work as a physician until he died in 1918.
What was it like being at the opening ceremony?
Well, it was a crowd of people and I was a little kid. It didn't make any impression on me. I didn't know much about Jewish uprising at the time. I didn't really know much about ghetto. I was just here with a lot of other people. I was not so smart. I really was just a little kid. I just want to add, I consider this the best monument to the Holocaust that I have seen all over the world, because it showed the fighting. It doesn't show people just dying. And I'm very proud of the people who fought